Having a Stevens minister, I didn't know what it was. I was struggling with a job, and I was struggling with just the feelings I was having personally, as well as just transitioning into something different.
One thing a Stephen minister can offer somebody is an hour or so a week of undivided attention.
We're there to be caregivers. We understand that God's the cure giver.
I felt like that one-on-one time with someone is so invaluable. Like being able to express yourself to someone else without judgment is something that is very rare. So being able to provide that to someone else, that's pretty amazing, and that's what I wanted to do. So.
I will say that every single time I've met with one, God has been there, and I have been able to say things that I think have comforted people.
What it meant to me on having one, is overwhelming, because my best friend is my wife, and I don't always want to bring burdens home to my wife and lay all of the negative stuff on my wife, and this was an opportunity to have another friend that would listen, that I could share, that I could count on, that would be there for a walk, a cup of coffee, sitting with me with prior to a surgery, so many things. And it helped me understand a little bit more of my own identity, because I identified myself younger as somebody growing up in the corporate world and climbing that ladder and being that director of sales or being that vice president of sales, and that's not who I was. And the identity that Barry helped me understand was that I'm a child of God, and that's where it starts. And the love that comes from God's family and the love that comes from the community of believers is just unbelievable.
It's been 24 years now that I've been doing this. It's just something that I feel God's called me to. It's one of those things that you know when you know kind of thing. And it's been an interesting ministry, to say the least. I've dealt with several people, several different situations, and each time I think I'm more blessed from dealing with them. I think that's probably the most important part of being a Stephen minister, is to be able to listen to them and let them see, it's a lot better when you talk out loud to someone rather than sitting in a corner brooding over something, and they get the chance to do that.
My grandmother, on my mother's side, maternal grandmother, in the latter stages of her life was in hospice, in a Catholic hospice. And I would go over and saw the care that the nuns were given to my grandmother, and I was just so touched by that. And I thought, these women are wonderful. I want to be one of them. Now, you should know I was raised Lutheran all my life. I didn't know we didn't have nuns. I was a young girl, But I thought, when I grow up, I'm going to be a nun. And I'm going to take care of those people. It just was that moving to me. And because that calling was so deep in me, that I've always felt that need.
I first got interested in Stephen ministry I don't know, a long time ago, actually, but I didn't really consider becoming one until recently. So right when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was kind of struggling with PTSD, and I was holding things inside that I shouldn't have been holding inside at all. And I I felt like I had no one to talk to, even though I had Stephen ministers actually, I didn't even realize it, coming up to me and saying, hey, do you want to talk? But so after a while, I had a close friend of mine say, hey, you seem like you've changed since you got out of the military. And then it all just kind of came out to him. And ever since that, I was like, wow, I feel amazing now that I actually was able to say that stuff. So I started feeling a longing to help other people. And I was like, I think I can be a good listener as long as I can, be quiet. So I started hearing more about Stephen ministry, and I'd see Stephen ministers in the back of the room waiting for people to pray with them. And I thought, I'd like to get involved in that, I think. So I asked, and they seemed very ecstatic that I was interested in becoming a Stephen minister.
What he found in his congregation was that he was not able to be everywhere when he was called. I mean, you'd go initially, like if someone died, and be with the family, but then, there were other congregational members with needs. So, he found it hard in a large congregation to be something and be there for everyone. And he discovered that he needed some help from the laity. So he took a group of members of his church and trained them himself on what they needed to do and how to do it and how to give compassionate care.
Pastor Steed had gone to the first leadership training course that was offered in 1978. And when she came to Prince of Peace, she saw that as a need for this congregation. And so when she wanted to start it here, and she and 3 other women from the congregation attended, I guess it would have been 1992, early 1992, a leadership training course together. And then we enrolled as a congregation August 31st, 1992. And training started that fall for the first class.
And I had left a job. I was a full-time RN in Baltimore, and over the years had respect of my coworkers and managers, and I was a mentor, and I loved my job there, and it was very hard to leave and start over here as a newbie before. And she was asking me how we were all adjusting, and I was having a tough time. And I think I actually cried, and she said to me, would you like a Stephen minister? And I said, what is that? I'd never heard of it before. And she had been trained as a Stephen minister herself and explained it, and I thought, what would it hurt? And I said, okay. So I was assigned with a Stephen minister here 21 years ago, and I met with her a few times, and it really helped because I didn't know a soul here. I'd left all my friends, and this person really helped me a lot. And I liked it so much that I decided to train and become a Stephen minister myself. So I have been one for 20 years now. To me, I've also been an RN, but being a Stephen minister has been like the icing on the cake of nursing, that I've actually been able to sit down and listen to people and have the time to listen to them talk about not just love in their life, but the other big human emotion, fear, which is the root of all problems in life. And I've been able to be an empty vessel for people to dump their angst, their worries, their fears into.
Some of the types of things that I have ministered to people for are job loss, financial problems, new babies in their life, death of someone they love dearly, someone in a position that moved, they're in a transition in their life.
I think it was a real lifesaver just to have that support, just to have someone to listen, just knowing that someone would do this because they want to. It reminded me there's very good people in the world, and that gave me a lot of hope. I was seeking a Stevens minister because I didn't want to go the usual clinical psychology route to a normal psychologist. I wanted someone with a biblical background and appreciation. I needed someone more caring and someone who would pray with me and for me, because I believe prayer helps a lot. I'm a full-time caregiver. I have a child with special needs, and I'm the only one that takes care of him, and that brings a lot of demands that many people don't understand unless they're in the situation. Everyone has issues, everybody has challenges, even the people that look like they have everything together. Everybody does not have everything going perfectly in their life. So she was human, and she was never judgmental, and she was smart and funny and just great.
If we didn't have pastoral support, you don't get referrals, you don't have backing to do what you do. If you don't have the congregation support, you don't have care receivers. If we didn't have faithful Stephen ministers that were trained and coming to supervision and seeing their care receivers, you wouldn't have the ministry. So you need all of that. And we've managed to have all that for these 25 years.
I think it's interesting to note also that our care doesn't stay within these walls.
No.
That we are open to members of other churches, people who are not members of any church.
But what we look for are what we call our wounded healers. We don't want people who have never experienced any pain or have not acknowledged that they've experienced it, but we want people who have slugged through it, who have gotten down and dirty with it and have come through the other side. People who understand and won't be judgmental, people who can be objective, people who understand how your spiritual gifts lead you through, and that you are just giving the care and God is doing the curing. Because you make a 2-year commitment, you meet twice a month, you do continuing education, so we're always training, we're always teaching, we're always learning. And the training itself seems daunting, 50 hours of classroom training, but it's not lecture. There's a lot of interaction, there's a lot of role playing, and that's necessary. So when you go out to meet with your care receiver the first time, you don't freeze up and freak out, and you've already gone through it a couple times with your Stephen ministers and your Stephen leaders, and you're confident, you're all girded up, and God's got you and pushing you right into it. I do want to thank the pastors and the congregation because they support us with both their referrals and their money. And the training materials do cost money, and the referrals come from the relationships in this life in the church that we share. If we weren't a relationship church, we wouldn't be. And it's so nice to have pastors and congregation that support this program. Come and talk to a Stephen minister. Our ears are open. We've heard it once, we'll hear it 100 times. It's okay. That's what we're here for.